Today is Wednesday, March 9th. We'll talk about a major new step the U.S. is taking to punish Russia and how it could impact prices here in the U.S., and what top American officials are saying about Putin getting impatient. Also, a controversial new law in Florida about what goes on in elementary schools, and more states are thinking about something similar. Plus, how Google is beefing up its cybersecurity, Amazon's new app for aspiring DJs, and the future for two top NFL quarterbacks. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The U.S. is taking another big step to hit Russia's economy as punishment for attacking Ukraine. President Biden announced the U.S. will ban imports of all Russian fossil fuels, including oil. Biden also banned any American investment in Russia's energy industry. That's where Russia gets most of its money. So if every country were to take that step, it would be crippling. So far, the UK says it will partially match the White House's commitment by banning Russian oil, but it will still keep getting natural gas and coal from the country. The Biden administration is trying to get other nations on board too, and the European Union is meeting about that later this week. The American ban has widespread support on Capitol Hill from both Democrats and Republicans, even though President Biden says it will mean even higher gas prices for Americans. But he warned energy companies not to exploit the situation with what he called excessive price increases. Biden made it clear his policies are not stopping U.S. oil drillers from increasing production. He's just asking that they use leases on federal land they already hold instead of expanding to new land. American officials are also trying to find other sources of energy to meet demand. Russia is making headway in its brutal invasion. The Russian forces have captured a strip of southern and coastal Ukraine. But the Ukrainians have been able to slow them down in many other areas, including the capital of Kyiv. Because of how fiercely Ukraine is fighting back, American spy chiefs say Russian President Putin is frustrated and about to get even more aggressive. The director of national intelligence told lawmakers Putin views this as a, quote, war he cannot afford to lose. Already, thousands of Ukrainians are thought to have been killed, but the exact number is not clear. It's also not clear on the Russian side, but the U.S. estimates about 2,000 to 4,000 Russian troops have died in battle. Several evacuation convoys have failed since Russian troops have reportedly been firing on the Ukrainian refugees. But one evacuation effort was apparently successful yesterday along a safe corridor Russia and Ukraine had agreed to. Overall, the UN says more than 2 million people have fled Ukraine since the fighting started less than 2 weeks ago. That's more than those who left Syria in the 3 years of war there. Most of the Ukrainian refugees are going to Poland, so that country is racing to open new shelters. At least one American from the so-called Citgo Six is finally able to come home. To recap, the group is called that because back in 2017, 6 Houston-based executives traveled to Venezuela for a Citgo Petroleum business meeting. But they were sentenced to prison there for embezzlement over a plan to refinance the oil company's bonds. The U.S. has been saying they were imprisoned on false charges without due process or access to a fair trial. Well, now several news outlets are citing sources who say one of the 6 was finally let out of prison. Another American was released too. He was detained in Venezuela more than a year ago because he brought a drone into the country. So for that, law enforcement there charged him with terrorism. These releases come after American officials took a high-profile trip to Venezuela over the weekend. That was the first diplomatic meeting since the U.S. cut off diplomatic relations with Venezuela in 2019. The first person to face a criminal trial for his role in the Capitol riot was just convicted. A jury found him guilty of every charge he was facing, which included gun charges and one for obstructing Congress's certification of the presidential election. He faces up to 20 years in prison for the obstruction charge alone. He's among more than 775 people who are still facing charges in the January 6th riot. And reports say this jury's verdict could impact hundreds of other accused people who have not yet made a plea deal, since a lot of lawyers were watching to see if that rarely used obstruction charge would actually hold up in court. More than 200 others have already pleaded guilty to a variety of misdemeanor and felony charges. Some have been sentenced to years in federal prison. And the federal government is still not done with this investigation. Just this week, the former leader of the right-wing group Proud Boys was arrested on conspiracy and other charges, even though he was not actually in Washington, D.C. on January 6th of last year. He's accused of coming up with plans to storm the Capitol. So far, no comment from him or his attorneys about the arrest and new charges. State lawmakers approved a highly controversial bill out of Florida. It's the one that's widely being called the Don't Say Gay bill, although that name was started by critics. To be clear, the word gay won't actually be banned. Basically, the measure says educators in Florida will no longer be allowed to talk about sexual orientation or gender identity with any students in kindergarten through third grade. Lessons about those topics will also be banned for other grades unless they are deemed developmentally appropriate. And schools will have to let parents know about any changes in a student's mental, emotional, and physical health, and that includes matters of gender identity or sexual orientation. If schools do not follow the new rules, parents would be able to sue. Republicans who voted for this bill say it's about giving parents the responsibility to have these conversations with their children instead of having kids learn about sensitive issues without them. But Democrats and activist groups say the proposal is an attack on the LGBTQ community. They worry it will lead to more stigma and bullying. Earlier this week, students all across Florida walked out of class in protest. But the bill passed anyway, and the governor has said he will sign it. And there could be more laws like this one soon. Many other states are also considering similar measures like Iowa, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Well, every state in the U.S. has now decided to drop their mask mandates. Hawaii became the 50th state to announce it will no longer require masks at indoor public places. Like in the rest of the country, Hawaii saw a winter surge of COVID-19, but it's gotten a lot better in recent weeks. So besides lifting the mask mandate, the state is also lifting strict entry requirements for travelers later this month. But just because the statewide rules are going away, that does not mean you'll never be asked to wear a mask again. Private businesses can still set their own rules. And about a third of American school districts will have mask mandates, though the rules at schools vary from state to state. All right, we have much more news coming up, but first let's take a quick break. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Whether it's job stress or parenting or the loss of a loved one, we all deal with tough times in our lives. Or maybe everything's fine, but you just feel like something is missing. I've experienced all of the above, and I found that therapy is a great way to deal with it and overcome it. Look, you probably know that all relationships take work, and that includes the most important relationship you have in your life, and that is the one you have with yourself. So this month, BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you that therapy is a great way to make sure you show up for yourself. BetterHelp is online therapy that is more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. It offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and the Newsworthy listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Google is beefing up its security with the second biggest deal in company history. The tech giant is shelling out $5.4 billion for the cybersecurity firm Mandiant. With a big shift to remote work, plus the ever-growing Russia-Ukraine crisis, cyber attacks are top of mind. So that's where Mandiant comes in. The head of Google Cloud said Mandiant will help keep users safe and secure by bringing more end-to-end security features across the cloud. The deal still has to get the okay from stockholders before it can finalize later this year. Another day, another slew of U.S. companies pulling out of Russia. This time, it's some of America's most iconic brands that were facing some ramped-up pressure to leave. McDonald's, Starbucks, PepsiCo, and Coca-Cola all announced they're suspending business in Russia, of course, because of the invasion of Ukraine. It's a significant move since some of these brands have been operating in Russia since it was part of the Soviet Union, like Pepsi, which has sold its products in Russia for more than 6 decades until now. And McDonald's opened its first location in Moscow right before the Soviet Union collapsed. Well, it's closing all 850 stores in the country for now, but McDonald's vowed to keep paying the salaries of its 62,000 Russian workers, so did Starbucks and PepsiCo. And many companies are also supporting their employees in Ukraine, continuing to pay salaries even while many of them have been forced to fight or flee. We have another round of internet outages to tell you about. The latest popular apps to quit working for a while: Spotify and Discord. They're back up and running now, but the audio streaming giant Spotify and the popular chat platform Discord were both down for thousands of users yesterday. And a lot of people complained on social media about the glitches. While those two were hit the hardest, other sites reportedly faced technical issues too, like Facebook, Wikipedia, and Google Cloud, just to name a few. It's all fixed now, but it's not clear yet what was behind these problems. If you've ever wanted to host your own live radio show, combining music and conversation, now you can with Amazon's new app called AMP. It lets users pick from tens of millions of licensed songs and create a live show, all for free. Users will even be able to take callers and pre-schedule their shows. It's being compared to Clubhouse, but with more music and less chatting. And not everyone can use it just yet. Amazon launched a beta version for now, so it's only available to iOS users who have an access code. In the NFL, one star quarterback is switching teams, while another is staying put, despite rumors he was leaving. First, we'll talk about longtime Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson becoming a Denver Bronco. But he's got a no-trade clause in his contract, meaning Russell cannot be traded to another team without his permission, so it does still need to be finalized. Denver had been in the running for the Green Bay Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, but Rodgers announced he'll be back with Green Bay for his 18th season. Some reports say his new contract will make him the highest-paid player in NFL history, but Rodgers tweeted he actually has not even signed a contract yet, so nothing's official. And that's it for the main news today, but now it's time for Work Wednesday, when we break down one interesting career or work-related news story every Wednesday. First, a message from our sponsor. In 2022, I'm looking forward to continuing to commit to and even improve this podcast while also being there for my family. So I've got my hands full, and I know you have a lot going on this year as well. So with all that running around we'll be doing, why not have a new pair of shoes that will last the whole journey? The Rothy's experience is always a combination of quality, comfort, and style. I know that everything I buy there will last a long time and be ready to wear out of the box with no blisters or hassle. Rothy's has both casual and dressy styles for both men and women, so you'll always find exactly what you need. Insanely comfortable flats, sneakers, loafers, ankle boots, and more. I actually have a new pair of flats on the way right now, and it's such an added bonus that everything Rothy's makes is better for the planet. They've repurposed millions of water bottles into their signature thread that goes into every single one of their products. Hit the new year in stride with a fresh pair of Rothy's. New customers get $20 off your first purchase at rothys.com/newsworthy. That's Rothys, Rothys, Rothys.com/newsworthy. Again, new customers get $20 off your first purchase at Rothys.com/newsworthy. Now back to Work Wednesday. U.S. employers added nearly 700,000 workers to their payrolls last month. The U.S. Labor Department said it was the biggest gain in 7 months. Plus, the rate of people without jobs fell. The unemployment rate edged closer to the 50-year low of 3.5%. If you remember, we actually hit that low right before the pandemic. Then shortly after the pandemic started, it reached a high of almost 15%. So this is a big difference. But it's important to mention the latest job numbers are results from mid-February. So they don't show what impact, if any, Russia's invasion had on the economy here in the U.S. And we're already facing the effects of that, like high oil prices, which could not only cost businesses more money to operate, but it could also keep consumers from spending money. Ultimately, economists say it could hurt the country's job market recovery. All right, thank you so much for joining us as part of your daily routine. We'll catch you up on more news to know tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.